Welcome back to our study this week, looking at Proverbs chapter 1. And today we're in verse 10 through 19. And I call this the enticement of sinners. First thing we see here is the command, which is pretty simple to understand. Do not consent. And here we see he's talking about the sin that comes from, where sin comes as an enticement. Sin is very enticing. And often comes to us, sin comes as an enticement in many, many different ways. And can be approached, can approach us in a variety of different forms. Sometimes it happens through the intelligence. Sometimes we're asked to, go into sin. We're enticed to sin through our minds. And so we're, say, hey, the idea of like evolution and things like that, to draw you away from the Lord. So sometimes it approaches through the mind. Sometimes it's through humor, right? Just telling a dirty joke or something like that. You're enticed to sin. You're enticed into falling into and thinking about things you shouldn't be thinking about, just through humor. Many dirty comics out there, right? Don't have to go too much into that. We know that a lot of humor is evil. A lot of humor is off-color or sexual in nature. And none of those things are good. And it entices us to, kind of make fun of it. But then if we're making fun of it, then do we have a proper reverence or care for what those things are being laughed at? Probably not. Sometimes it's through skepticism. We're called to be skeptics and always, it's not always a bad thing. We should be careful. We should be thinking, but oftentimes it just makes, often skepticism, the enticement to sin and skepticism is often to ignore what the Bible has to say. And always be skeptical about what God is doing, what He said, His promises. So there's always that enticement there. It's like what Satan said to Eve. Did God really say? So there's that skepticism there. Did He really say that? Does He really mean that? And so that's what usually, that's how that sin creeps in there, through that enticement of skepticism. Sometimes we're enticed to sin through freedom, right? Well, I am free in Christ. And so sometimes we're called to do that. I mean, the other side is there too. It's not freedom, but legalism. We go into this, we fall into either ditch, really. We can fall into the idea of freedom in Christ, or we get into the legalistic part, or and then we forget that it's all about Christ. So we can fall into these sins on either side. And then there's through beauty. I mean, sometimes things that are beautiful entice us to sin. He's going to talk about that. My son, he's going to talk to his son about women and the enticement to sin with women, which Solomon, would have well known. And then there's also the enticement through power. Power is often a road, an avenue through which sin entices us. You'll get power through this. You'll get strength through doing this sin. And sometimes that's true. I mean, you're going to get earthly power, right, from doing certain sins. You kidnap someone, you murder someone, that's power over that person. It's not good power, it's sinful power, but yet it is power, and that's enticing to us. We like power. So that's where we find in the enticement to sin. It comes from many different avenues. Those are just a few examples of how sin entices us. But we also want to know that, or remember that sinners do and approve evil. They do and approve evil. We know this. Turn over to Romans chapter 1. Again, Romans chapter 1 is good for so many different things, because especially when you're talking about what's going on in the world, it connects very well with Proverbs. But Romans 1:31 says, or 32, it says, though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die. Which you stop to think about it for a minute. people who are not believers, they know God's righteous decree that those who do sin should die. They know that. He says that everyone knows that. They've heard it. That's just innately in humanity. That if you do the things that are listed up above, like slandering, hating God, being insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless, if you are those things, you're doing those things, you know that you ought to die because you're doing those things. And so everyone knows that. I mean, you can cover that truth over with a lie, which is what we do, but we know that. And then the next part of the verse says they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. So there it is. The enticement to sin is like, it's not only that you are enticed to sin yourself, but you're enticed to entice others, right? You're drawn into this idea that you not only want to approve sin yourself and do sin yourself, but you approve those who practice other sins as well. And so that's what you want. You want approval for yourself, but you also want to approve others. I mean, you can see this so clearly in what's going on in our culture today with the whole sexual confusion and craziness that's happening. People just, they know what they're doing is wrong because there's a certain shame attached to what they're doing. Now, they go out there, pride, and we want to have pride. Why do you always have to talk about pride? It's because you're ashamed of what you're doing. And why do you need everyone else to approve of you? Why do you need anyone to approve of you? Because you know what you're doing is wrong. And so sinners do and approve evil. That's what they do. And so, yes, we approve evil. We know what we're doing is wrong. We know that we are evil in what we're doing, that what we're doing deserves to die. But now we also want the approval of others, and we want to approve others. So we want to get together. We want to get all these people together. We want to approve what they're doing. We want to, support them. We want to be there for them. We want to approve their evil. Even though we know that what they're doing leads to death, we want to approve it because we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel good that what we're doing, even though it's evil and deserves death, we just want to cover that over and pretend that that's not the truth. And so we'll stir up in the culture, in the groups around us, get them excited about sin. And so in that way, sinners entice one another to do sin. That's how it's always been done, right? You get a group of people, they're doing bad stuff. They just get more people to do bad stuff because it makes them feel good. It helps them assuage their shame and the fear that they know that what they're doing is going to lead to their ultimate destruction. And they know that. They know that, but they're just kind of deceiving themselves. And it's easier to deceive yourself when you have a bunch of other people saying, don't worry about it, right? Oh, yeah, we approve you. We support you. Yes, we are in this group together. We'll make it through. We'll get everyone to approve us. But in the end, you're all heading to destruction. And so you can prove all you want, but the end is death. So that's not a viable option there, but that's exactly what the world does. Now, the command here that we find in Proverbs for the father to the son, he says, do not consent. Now, what is consent? Well, consent means agreement. So turn over to Luke chapter 11. And I want to go down to verse 47 and 48. So Luke 11, 47 through 48. It's actually a longer section. So let's go back up to 45. It says, one of the lawyers answered him, Teacher, in saying these things, you insult us also. And he said, Woe to you, lawyers, also, for you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers. Woe to you, for you build the tombs of the prophets whom your fathers killed. So you are witnesses, and you consent to the deeds of your fathers, for they killed them and build their tombs. So this is an example of consent, right? They're consenting they're going along with, they're agreeing with, is what the thing is, what their fathers did. So they have the tombs of the prophets, and they're going out there decorating them. Like, you realize that your fathers killed them, and now you're decorating them? What are you saying? That you agree with what they've done. So that's the problem right there. So that's the idea of agreement. Also, consent. What else consent means? Well, consent also means choice. There's a choice involved, and you're making a choice. 1 Corinthians 10:13. Let's turn over there to 1 Corinthians 10:13. Because oftentimes, this idea of sinning, we kind of fall into this idea, this lie, really, that, I can't control myself. It's not my fault. I have the sinful nature. I have to do it. But what does 1 Corinthians 10:13 tell us? It says, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. So that's the thing, as Christians, no one makes us sin. It's not the devil made me do it. It's now a choice. Now, yeah, if you're not a believer, then you don't really have a choice. You just sin. That's what you do. But here we have, it's no temptation has overcome you that's not common to man. So whatever you're being tempted by, whatever sin that you're being drawn into, nothing is uncommon, right? You're like, oh, this is the worst. No one else has had it this bad. Guess what? Jesus said, no temptation is overtaking you. That's not common to man. All the temptations that you go through are common to people. You've never been, the temptation you're going through is not unusual. And so you can say, okay, well, I'm tempted like other people are. Yes. And God is faithful. Okay, cool. Yes, true. And he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. So if you're being tempted to sin, God will not let that temptation go beyond your ability. Your ability to do what? To escape. Because he says with the temptation, you also provide the way of escape. So you can escape that temptation. You can escape that sin because he won't let you get beyond your ability. And he will also provide the way out, the escape. That you can endure this trial, this temptation. You can make it through. So God doesn't allow these temptations to come into your life so that you will fall. Right? It says, therefore, let no allow it. Anyone who thinks that he stands, take heed lest he fall. Take heed. Watch. Be careful. But no temptation is overtaking you. That's not common. And so you don't have to sin. A lot of people go, well, I can't control myself. I do it, and I keep doing it, and it keeps happening. Whoever says that is either not a believer, or they have some kind of defeatist position. A believer, yeah, I believe it. If they say, well, I can't stop this, yeah, well, probably not. Agreed. But as a Christian, now we have given the power, and God says he is faithful. He will provide the way out. If you're saying as a Christian that you can't overcome the sin, then you're saying that Jesus is a liar, and that God is not faithful, and that Paul is wrong. If you're prepared to say that, then you're actually falling outside of faith in Christ, because that's not faith anymore. You're skeptical, right? You're being tempted to fall into that sin. So if God says he's faithful and he will provide that way out, he will. We got to trust that. And consent also means giving away the right to withhold. You're giving away your right to withhold something. Matthew 3. Let's cruise on over to Matthew 3:14. It says, John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptized by you. You come to me. But Jesus answered, wait a minute, that's not the right verse. Yeah, it is. That's right. Hello. John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? But Jesus answered him, let it be so now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. That's where it says, then he consented. So here's another idea of consenting. John says, no, I'm not going to baptize you. You should be baptizing me. And Jesus says, well, let it be so now, for it's thus fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then John consented. He was withholding something, right? But he says, okay, I will go along with what you say. I will do what you are suggesting. I could withhold, right? But I'm going to go with you. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to consent. I'm going to give away my right to withhold. And I'm going to go along. So there you go. That's the idea of consenting. So what the Father is saying here is to the Son and to us is that if sinners come to entice us, do not consent. Do not agree with them. Do not, make that choice. Do not, give away the right to withhold. You can withhold. You don't have to do that. You can make the choice. You don't have to agree with sinners if they entice you to sin. If that temptation is coming, you do not have to give in to it. You don't. You just don't. So that's the end of our study for today. Come back next time. We'll look at the example.